Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France, and of course you good up boys in Canada. You know we love you in Canada. We also love the Big C tribe in Africa. Thank you for following Big C Sports, the Big C tribe on the Big C Sports Network. Also, we love no one more than them good old boys down south, in the land of the free, in the home of the brave. And Big C has me flying solo tonight on the Charlton and Big C Sports Show. I think he's still getting things together from all that celebration them good old boys were doing down south. And in the southern states where we had Georgia and we had Alabama playing for the college football national championship. A beautiful game, a game where it went right down to the wire with some freshman players pulling out the win for the University of Alabama, and also the great Nick Saban, who became arguably the best coach in the history of the college football universe, because he won another national championship for Alabama, the 5th time in 10 years. And when you think about Alabama and their dynasty they're building down there, they had a freshman quarterback that came in. His name is Tua Tagovailoa, and he came out of St. Louis High School in Honolulu, Hawaii, as a high school all-state player from the beautiful islands in the state of Hawaii. And now he finds his way at Alabama. And not only did he replace then Jalen Hurts, who played for the national championship title last year with Alabama with a 25-2 record, and then wasn't having success in the first half. So Nick Saban brings in this freshman out of Hawaii who was part of the Elite 11 quarterback challenge that Trent Dilfer saw several years ago. And this kid has success written all over him. It reminds a lot of people of the late Kenny the Snake Stabler, who also played at Alabama, a great player and a Heisman Trophy candidate. We have just an abbreviated advertisement tonight for the Big C Sports Show and Charlton and Big C Sports, and so many things coming to us in the world of sports. We have a big slate of NFL coming up for the weekend, some great football matchups. Hopefully we'll see some great football there. We're expecting New England to advance, and we're expecting them to advance over Tennessee. We're also expecting, when you think about what happens in the world of sports and how the Pittsburgh Steelers get a rematch with the Jacksonville Jaguars, we're expecting a lot out of that game, especially with the Steelers and Big Ben Roethlisberger, expecting the Steelers to advance in that game. And when you look at the NFC, we look at the Atlanta Falcons. They're on the road at Philadelphia. A lot of people thought Philadelphia was the best team going into the playoffs, but they did lose Carson Wentz to injury, and now a lot of people are looking at what's going to happen in that game. Will the defense step up for Philly? Or will the Falcons come in with Matt Ryan and finding Julio Jones at least 10 times in that game, and when the Falcons get the win in that? So I'm expecting that to be the case, where the Falcons will win. The game that I think a lot of people are really excited about, and no one really knows who to pick. You have the Vikings. They're at home. They're playing the New Orleans Saints, coming in with a big win that they had against the Carolina Panthers. And that's a matchup that it's really a pick-em game. Even though if you look at quarterback, I think you look at the New Orleans Saints, they have a better opportunity of winning that game with Drew Brees. So again, in the NFL playoffs, all-time division, Eastern Time playoff games, Saturday, January 13th, Atlanta at Philadelphia, 4:35 kickoff on NBC Sports. And then you have Tennessee at New England, an 8:15 kickoff on CBS Sports. And again, the New England's had a lot of controversy this weekend, and not necessarily Tom Brady and Belichick, but the talk is are they getting along in New England? The Kraft organization. If one thing you can say about them, Brady's won 5 Super Bowls under that same regime led by Kraft and Belichick. I don't see them stumbling at home in the playoffs, even though you look at a team like Tennessee. How many people expected Tennessee to beat Kansas City last week? But Andy Reid's had trouble winning playoff games, and especially when he's been in Kansas City. He had success in Philadelphia, took them to the Super Bowl, but that was a decade ago. But you look at Tennessee, what are they bringing to the game? They bring a quarterback who had a stellar performance, and they have Henry running the ball in the backfield. Their defense is decent. They were down 21-3 at halftime against Kansas City, and they found a way to mount a comeback. That's the same Kansas City team that beat New England in the first part of the season over in the Foxborough. So will they bring that same type of performance that they had against Kansas City in the cold? It's going to be cold in New England. But New England's a different breed of cat. I think they'll get that win rather easily over Tennessee. But again, it's NFL football. Anything can happen. You have the point spread. New England's actually favored by 13. 13 points at home in a playoff game is unheard of, but they are favored by 13. The over-under is 47. And I think they'll cover. I think they cover 13. I think they'll win that game by 2 touchdowns and maybe even a field goal. So that's a Las Vegas special. They're boarding on a 13-point favorite. I think New England can cover by more than that. Atlanta Falcons getting 2.5 points at Philadelphia. This is the same Atlanta team that came west to California and beat the Rams and held Todd Gurley, the NFL's leading rusher, and I think the league's MVP, to 101 yards on 14 carries. I don't know why he only ran the ball 14 times, averaging over 7 yards a carry. And that is a defense that could not stop the run. They gave up 7 yards a carry. Philadelphia has Jay Ajayi, who's not Todd Gurley, but he's still a good running back. He's had 200-yard rushing performances in his career. When he was at Miami, they got rid of him because he turned the ball over a lot, and from what I understand, didn't like to come to practice enough. But he's no Todd Gurley. And I think when you look at Philadelphia at home, they don't have Carson Wentz. They'll have to go up against Matt Ryan, last year's NFL MVP. If they can find Julio Jones at least 10 times, and remember they have Freeman in the backfield, their defense is good enough. I don't think their defense is dominant, but they're good enough to hold the Rams to 10 points. But I think the Rams had a bad offensive game, a bad offensive showing in that. They had Goff throwing the ball 45 times. That's too much for a quarterback in his second season. I think when you look at Foles does have experience winning football games, but he's coming in at the later part of the season, and the Eagles haven't played very well the last 2 weeks of the season since playing with him at the quarterback, because they still miss Wentz and what he can do offensively. So Foles will have to have one of his better games. I don't know if he can do that against Atlanta. Ryan's going to throw the ball well, and they have Julio Jones. If you don't hear Julio Jones with 10 receptions, then the Philly has a chance. It's going to be cold, but they got to find a way to get the ball in his hands. So I'm looking for Atlanta to actually cover that 2.5-point favorite. They have it. So to have Atlanta going into Philadelphia, a team that was considered the best team in the NFC all season, but that's when Wentz was playing, and he had the knee injury when they went to the Coliseum and lost. Actually, they beat the Rams, but he lost out because he lost the season with a knee injury trying to dive into the end zone. So that's the Saturday games. I'm going to go with New England with a 13-point favorite. I think they'll win it by more than that. Atlanta is going to be tough going into the cold. The over-under is 41.5 points. So that tells you Las Vegas knows something to have a 41.5 points. With the Eagles don't score a lot of points, though. When you look at their last couple of games, they've been held down, especially that game against Dallas where they just flunked to that contest. So I'm looking for Atlanta to throw the ball and to run the ball well enough, and the defense should step up, and I think Atlanta gets that win. When we go into the Sunday playoff game, we have Pittsburgh at home against Jacksonville. Jacksonville defeated Pittsburgh earlier in the season. Two different teams. Steelers will not lose this game. Their offense, they have Big Ben Roethlisberger. They have Antonio Brown, should be back and see some playing time. Le'Veon Bell, Juju Smith-Schuster. They have the passing game that will work in Pittsburgh, but they can also run the ball with Le'Veon Bell. Their defense is stout, even though they gave up a lot of points later in the season. I know they lost at home to New England where they gave up a couple of touchdowns, and then, of course, they gave up a late score against Tom Brady and the Patriots. But this team coming into Pittsburgh, Jacksonville's no New England. They're not the same team. They were playing great earlier in the year with a great defense, but Pittsburgh at home with the terrible towels. Mike Tomlin is a great coach. They know how to motivate the players, but more than motivation, the Steelers are a big-time scoring machine, and I know they'll score enough points. If you look at the over-under is 40 points. Jacksonville scored 13 points at home against Buffalo, which is not as good as Pittsburgh. They did that at home when the weather was decent. It's going to be a little bit colder in Pittsburgh. The Steelers score a lot of points. I think they'll get at least 4 touchdowns in this game, maybe a field goal. So I know they'll cover that 7-point spread. I don't see Jacksonville getting more than 2 touchdowns at Pittsburgh. They couldn't even get 2 at home against Buffalo. Getting 2 at Pittsburgh with that same regime and a quarterback that can't throw the ball well in Bortles, I look at Pittsburgh having a solid win at home and advancing to the AFC Championship game. The game that a lot of people don't know, how to pick it. If you think about it, you look at the Minnesota Vikings. They have the home field in this game. They were able to rest last week. Case Keenum's shown that he's a good quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater, off the injury, people thought maybe the Vikings were going to have to rebuild their system. But he's coming and he's played well enough to play. And I think he's going to, not only will he keep that job, he may be the starting quarterback going into next year, no matter what happens with Minnesota in their run. And you look at what they have in stake. If they get to the championship game, many people thinking that Atlanta's going to knock off Philadelphia, and they probably will. Everything lines up for that to happen. Minnesota hosting an NFC championship game, if they can beat New Orleans, that's a lot on the line, almost too good to be true. That all you have to do is win this first divisional game and you're going to host the NFC championship game at home. Again, that's if Atlanta beats Philly, and we'll know that by Saturday. So on Sunday, is that too much pressure for a young team that's battle-tested? They've been in the playoffs before. But all the pressure on the line to know that they're going to be able to host the NFC championship game at the same stadium that's going to host a Super Bowl that's never happened in the history of the NFL. And that might be too much to overcome because Drew Brees was going to come to town. You know Drew Brees is good for 300 yards. The game they had against Carolina, it showed you that New Orleans can outscore people, and they may have to outscore the Vikings in this game. Is the Minnesota Viking offense as potent as Carolina? I don't think so. I think Cam Newton makes it work in Carolina. Minnesota, they have a stingy defense. Remember, they held the Rams down when the Rams went in there and got beat. I think they held the Rams down. They beat them 26-7 earlier in the year. This is a Minnesota Viking team that can fight on the football. They're good in the secondary. They're second in. The receivers and the defenders are really good. Throwing the football, Keenum has a good stable of receivers to throw to. But something tells me, if you're going to beat New Orleans, which may have the best running game left in the league, in the playoffs, Drew Brees, maybe he's not Tom Brady in reputation, but I think I give Drew Brees a chance to throw for 350 yards sooner than Tom Brady could. I think Brees has a great receiving core. Their running backs are dominant. This is a team that can give up a lot of points and still win a game. We saw that with Carolina. They can give up about 4 touchdowns and still win because they throw the ball so well. I don't think the Vikings can give up 4 touchdowns and win. And I know a lot of people think the Vikings are at home. It'd be great to see them win. It's a great Cinderella story if the Vikings can host the NFC Championship game at home. I just got a feeling in my gut. I know Minnesota's favored by 4. I know the over-under is 45. It would be great to see the Vikings win, but for anyone to outscore New Orleans, a team that can flat out throw the football and run it too, and their defense steps up against big-time competition, I don't think Keenum's the same quarterback that Cam Newton is. And to me, it looks like New Orleans, they have nothing to lose. They're on the road. They're still in the dome. They don't have to face inclement weather. And they have a team that's battle-tested, and they're clicking on all cylinders offensively. This is a team that could have blown out the Carolina Panthers, but Carolina kept fighting back and found a way to keep that game close in the end. In fact, Carolina had a chance to win it in the end, but the defense for New Orleans stepped up. So as much as I would like to see the Vikings win for so many reasons, it's just a feel-good story. It's hard to bet against New Orleans. Again, the over-under is 45. The Vikings are favored by 4, and you got to show me where someone can beat New Orleans by 4 points right now. I think there's 2 teams left that could do it, and that would be the Steelers and also New England. But, you know, we have to play it on the field, and that's why they will play the game on the field. It doesn't matter my opinion, but I'm curious to see that game more than any game that's going to be played this weekend. New England at home versus Tennessee, Atlanta on the road at Philadelphia, Pittsburgh at home versus Jacksonville, New Orleans at Minnesota. That's the game that I really want to see. And again, the team that wins that game, of course, they have a chance of getting to the Super Bowl. So we'll look forward to seeing that. And no matter what happens, it's going to be a great football weekend. I do want to take some time to say that sports is a billion-dollar industry. And boys and girls sports is the foundation to this billion-dollar industry. And for every athletic and sporting event, you need athletic and event insurance. We work with Ben and Mark. They've been around half a century. They work with Big C Sports. Whether you're a pro team, a collegiate team, a high school team, or your mom and pop soccer league, when you reach out to them, let them know that Big C sent you. 800-772-8624. 800-772-8624. I want to run down some of the top high school basketball teams in the United States of America. For girls basketball, number 1, We have Archbishop Mitty out of San Jose, California. They're 13-0. Number 2, St. John's College out of Washington, D.C., 12-1 on the season. Number 3, St. Mary's of Stockton, California, another private school at 13-2 on the season. Followed by number 4, Duncanville, Texas, known for a football powerhouse for Texas high schools. Duncanville, Texas, the girls' high school basketball team. They are number 4 in the country, 26-1. That's a lot of wins. Number 5, Riverdale, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. These programs coming out of football-rich states also have good girls basketball teams, so we want to pay homage to that. You have number 6, Christ the King out of Middleville Village, New York, and they're 9-0. Think about this. Christ the King out of New York is 9-0, but you have Duncanville, Texas, 26-1. They played a lot more games. Don't know what's going on in New York, not being able to play as many games as the school down in Texas. Number 7, Mercer County out of Hillsburg, Kentucky at 15-1. And number 8, Hoover out of Alabama, 18-0. A lot like the Alabama Crimson Tide. They have a lot of successful high school programs down in the state of Alabama. Number 9, Centennial, Las Vegas, Nevada, 14-2. Followed by number 10 is Winter Haven out of Florida. They're also 14-0. And that rounds up the girls' top 10 high school basketball programs in the United States of America. As we look on the scale of college basketball, a lot of people love college basketball, but it's hard to get into it as much as it is the NBA because players are one and done, and they seem to go on from year to year. They had a different program. You really don't get a chance to know who they are, unlike a team that plays in the NBA where you get to know who their players are year after year. But I want to look at some of the women top 25 for college basketball, and we'll pay homage to them too on Big C Sports. Number 1, UConn. Out of Gino Armiana, they're 13-0. Constantly winning national championships, even though they were knocked off last year by South Carolina. Number 2, Notre Dame, 15-1. Followed by number 3, Louisville at 18-0. Good basketball down there in the state of Louisville, Kentucky. And you have Mississippi, number 4 in the country. Mississippi State, actually, they're 17-0. Followed by number 5, Baylor, out of the Big 12 Conference at 14-0. Those are the top 5 programs in women's basketball, and that shows you how much they have success in their sports programs down south, because a lot of the programs we mentioned, whether it's UConn or Notre Dame, but you get to Mississippi and you get Louisville and Baylor, these are southern programs. Number 6, we have number 6, Tennessee, 15-0, followed by number 7, Texas at 13-1, number 8, Oregon at 15-2, number 9, South Carolina, another southern school at 13-2, and rounded out the top 10 is number 10, Ohio State. The Buckeyes are 15-2 out of the Big Ten Conference. That's for the women basketball programs. We always want to pay homage. I know in the world of sports, the men's programs make a lot more money, and there's a lot more money pumped into them. But at Big C Sports, we want to also acknowledge some of the top basketball programs in the country led by the women, because they play hard, they travel around the country just like the men, and they even tend to graduate at a better rate. We'll jump across to the top basketball programs that we have. We'll showcase that. Every week we'll talk about who's the top basketball programs in the country, not just for the men and women. We'll also do it for your high school programs, and I love bringing that to you on Big C Sports. I know in the second part of our segment, Flying Solo today, I do want to bring up the fact when we finished the college football season, and we saw a great game with Alabama and Georgia, and they decided not only the SEC championship but the national championship as well. Alabama finished the season 13-1. The Crimson Tide ranked number 1 in the country. That's how they began, ranked number 1 in the country. They got 62 first place votes. You think about this program. They were going into the bowl championship series ranked number 4 in the country. They had one loss on the road at Auburn, their biggest conference rival. Okay, there was so much talk on Alabama not even getting to the Final Four. Now, this is what it talks about when you think about the pollsters. And Nick Saban was saying, forget about the polls. We decide who's going to win these games on the field. And you got to go along with what Nick Saban said. He knew if they could get into the national championship picture, he had a defense that could help them win. They didn't necessarily have the offense until they found Tua that came into the game in the second half against Georgia and led them from a halftime deficit where they were shut out at halftime to come back to win that game in overtime at 26-23. But it's a great game. So Alabama, with a lot of high school All-Americans, Najee Harris, All-American running back out of Antioch High School in the Bay Area near Oakland, He went as a high school All-American, considered the top running back in the state of California and the top in the country. And he goes down south to play in the SEC and comes on in the second half and helps Alabama win a national championship. So congratulations, Alabama. Number 2, Georgia. Georgia finished the season 13-2, and their previous rank was number 3. So congratulations to Georgia. They hadn't played for a national championship since they had the great Herschel Walker back under Vince Dooley back in the 90s, actually in the 80s. So congratulations, Georgia. They're also looking strong, and their quarterback's also from the great state of California, so they'll be strong again next year. We look at number 3. What do you say about Oklahoma? This is a team that fired Coach Stoops. It's hard to live up to the legacy of Barry Switzer when he was coaching Oklahoma back in the day when they were winning national championships. Now, Baker Mayfield, one of the most controversial figures in college football. But on the football field, he can flat out play football. He transferred over from Texas A&M. He was a walk-on there and goes to Oklahoma. And he had to compete against all the odds, all the All-Americans that go there. And this shows something to the kids that want to walk onto a program. You have a chance to go in and compete. If they're given the opportunity to, go compete. You have a chance to earn a job, at least the chance to play for a team that can win a national championship, or at least compete for a national championship. So I appreciate Baker Mayfield and what he's done as far as showing that you don't always have to be a scholarship kid like the kids that go down to Alabama and Georgia. This kid walked on and earned a scholarship, so that gives every kid hope. If you have a talent, make your own tape, send it off to the coaches, see if they'll give you a chance to compete. And he ended up playing in the Rose Bowl against Georgia in a phenomenal game against Georgia down in the Rose Bowl where they lost in overtime. Clemson, number 4, 12-2 on the season. This is the team that was ranked number 1 going into the Bowl Championship Series. They were shut down by Alabama. Didn't even score a touchdown. They lost 24-6 to Alabama. And what does that say about Alabama? The rankings don't matter. What matters is if you're prepared to play in these games and if you're given the opportunity. And that's what Nick Saban said. Think about it. The team that won the national championship in Alabama, they were almost kept out of the national championship competition because the bowl committee almost chose not to put them in there. Ohio State felt the same way. They felt they should have gotten in, but Ohio State had 2 losses, and they had a big loss to Iowa that really kept them out, but they had a big win in the Cotton Bowl, beating USC 24-7, and a game where they really dominated that game at the line of scrimmage. And Ohio State brings me to them number 5 in the country, 12-2 on this season, ranked 5th going into the BCS bowl games. This is a team, you wonder how they lost their way. They lost early at home to Oklahoma. Nothing wrong with that, but they lost by double digits. And they lost on the road at Iowa. Those 2 back games kept them from showcasing how good they are with Urban Meyer. Because defensively, if you take away the loss to Oklahoma and you take away the loss where they give up 55 points to Iowa, this is a team that can represent any conference as a conference champion, but at least be one of the better teams that's capable of winning a championship. That's why I think the bowls will expand. You can't do enough when you only have 4 teams competing for the top prize in the college football universe, the national championship trophy. Ohio State was good enough to play in that game, but rankings-wise, if you don't get in, you can't play. Wisconsin finished number 6 in the country, 13-1. Here's a team that was undefeated on the season until they ran into Ohio State. A team that had they knocked off Ohio State, they would have been in the BCS, in the Final Four. But they did not have the same type of athlete that Ohio State has. The coaching's good, but not as good as what you get with Urban Meyer. And Ohio State's more of a name school. So they're going to get in even if they have a loss. Ohio State 2 losses, but still when they had the chance to play head-to-head, they beat Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game, showing that they were the more dominant program out of the Big Ten conference. So you can't knock Ohio State for that. They put up when they had to, even though it's a game that they should have been in the finals at least. If we had 8 teams, there's no way they wouldn't have been in there. And when you have the talent, and J.T. Barrett at the helm with Ohio State, there's no one that would convince me that they would not have found a way to reach at least the championship game in that series. A team that a lot of people wonder, and this again, rankings don't matter. I know Central Florida went undefeated, 13-0. But is there anyone in the football universe that thinks that Central Florida could beat Ohio State, that they could beat Clemson, that they could beat Oklahoma or Georgia or Alabama? Well, they beat Auburn. Auburn was a team that a lot of people had ahead of everyone when they knocked off Alabama. People thought that Auburn was going to be the number one team in the country and go on to win the national championship. When they ran against Georgia, Georgia handled that game. But that was a loss that they avenged also. So it's almost on any given Saturday you can win a game or lose a game. And that's why being undefeated doesn't guarantee that you're the best team in the country. Sometimes you have a team with 2 losses like Ohio State that might just be the best team in the country if they had the chance to play for it on the field. But as long as we leave the championship games in the hands of voters and posters, it's never going to be a good way to choose, because even Nick Saban almost got left out with Alabama, and everyone's crowning them as a dynasty, the next dynasty program like what Pete Carroll built at USC, back in the mid-2000s. And you also had, Lou Holtz built that at Notre Dame. You had Jimmy Johnson that built it down in Miami along with Hallam Schellenberger and Schellenberger. And you had Woody Hayes back in the day at Ohio State. He had Ohio State always winning Big Ten championships. We didn't have the bowl set up back then the way we do now. So when you got top programs, doesn't matter where they're ranked. All that matters is do they get the chance to play. And I think we'll see more of that shaping up in the next 5 years as they realize there's a lot better football when you put the top teams together. So Central Florida, congratulations on a great season. But even their coach, Scott Frost, left to go back to Nebraska. So there's not a lot of loyalty in the world of college coaching. They did have a good team, but national championship quality, I don't think so, even though they did beat Auburn. Any given Saturday, someone can win. Penn State finished number 8 in the country, 11-2 on the season. Coach Franklin put together a solid program. They played in the Rose Bowl last year, lost that game to USC. And then this year, they come back and they get another bowl victory. This time they beat Washington out of the Pac-12. That's a closer game that Washington probably could have won, but Jake Browning wasn't on target. But you want to credit Penn State for having a good season, especially with all the turmoil they had with Joe Paterno down there at Penn State. So congratulations to Penn State getting back on top. TCU, another team out of the Big 12 Conference, 11-3 on the season. There was a time in the season when people thought that TCU could play for at least the national championship, or at least get into the Final Four, but they were knocked off by Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game. Oklahoma clearly dominated that game and were the better team coming out of that conference. Here's a team coming up that I've followed for many years, the University of Southern California Trojans, men of Troy, the heart of Los Angeles, some of the best talent in any major metropolitan area in the LA area. Southern Cal finishes 11-3. Not a bad season considering the Pac-12 is tough to win, even though they had a poor showing in the bowls games. They went 1-7 in the bowl games. But they still play everybody, and when you get to know your opponents in your conference, it's harder to beat those teams. I know Sam Darnold declared for the NFL draft. Of course, if you can get the money, you take the money. But if anyone can tell me that his performance against Ohio State makes him NFL ready, I don't think so. He did pass over 4,000 yards this year at USC, which is a record for the Trojans. But he made a lot of bad reads, and in the NFL that could cost him. He's going to have to get some good coaching to get his system down. I thought he could have benefited from another year at USC because they do have a pro-style offense, but I do wish him the best if he gets drafted in the NFL. I want to look at Notre Dame. I look at Notre Dame, and this is America's darling team. They finished 11 in the country at 10-3, and can't say anything bad about the program. Coach Kelly rebuilt the program from what they had the year before when he was on the hot seat. Notre Dame can compete with anyone. They were rolling along. They only lost to Georgia at home, a close game, and then they were rolling and right up in the top 4, ready for a bowl consideration for the Final Four. And they were blown up by Miami 40-7. It's as if they laid an egg in that game and didn't play very well. They finished at home with Navy in a close game, and then they went out to the West Coast and lost to Stanford in a great ball game where Love had a great game against them. So you can't knock Notre Dame for playing one of the tougher schedules in the country every year, but when you're trying to win national championships, it may also hurt you that the schedule's so tough. And then rounding out, when we look at the top 25, just run into that, Auburn, 10-4 in the season, another team out of the SEC. They finished number 12. Number 13, Miami, Florida, out of the ACC at 10-3, followed by number 14, Oklahoma State, 10-3, out of the Big 12. Washington, out of the Pac-12, finished 15th in the country at 10-3 on the season. Last year, they were in the Final Four. Michigan State finished number 16 at 10-3. Another team out of the Big Ten. Think about their success they've had at Michigan State. Just not a top-tier Big Ten team, but always good enough to be in the top 20 rankings, it seems. Number 17, another Big Ten program, Northwestern, at 10-3 on the season. Gotta love Northwestern. They don't have the best stadium, don't have the best facilities. They're probably the toughest academic school in the Big Ten, and they finished number 17 in the country at 10-3. Number 18, LSU, another team out of the SEC at 9-4 in the season. A team that's always in competition for the best athletes, at least in the South. And they do it again. They're loaded with top talent, but when it comes to winning the national championship, they've had a hard time getting there and being that consistent team that could compete in the SEC. Number 19, Stanford. I think at what Stanford has done, the toughest academic program on the West Coast, maybe even the top in the country outside of Harvard. And you look at Stanford going 9-5 out of the Pac-12. Coach Shaw, NFL quality coach, but he likes it there on the farm. They finished number 19 in the country at 9-5 on the season. I love Stanford and the fact they graduate their kids and they go on to have a great life. Number 20, Mississippi State finished 9-4 out of the SEC, a program that's an up-and-coming program, a team that can knock off teams every now and then, but they finished 9-4, number 20 in the country. And so we wish them luck out of the SEC. It's hard to compete when you have Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, and Texas A&M and LSU in Florida to compete with year in and year out. Number 21, South Florida finished 22, actually 10-2 in the country. And Charlie Strong, fired from Texas, goes to South Florida and takes his team to number 21 ranking. In Texas is still trying to rebuild. I thought that Charlie Strong was a great hire by Texas, but he did not get the support that you need to have a big-time college football program. So congratulations to the Bulls of South Florida with Charlie Strong. Number 22, Boise State out of the Mountain West Conference, 11-3 on the season. This is a Boise State team. Doesn't matter who's at the helm. They're always in the thick of things. They competed with Fresno State for the Mountain West Conference Championship and found a way to win that game late in the fourth quarter and went into a bowl game and beat Oregon down in Las Vegas. So even though they're out of the Mountain West, kind of a second-tier league to the Pac-12, but they beat a Pac-12 team in Oregon, and they seem to beat teams every year out of the Pac-12. So that's a program that always steps up and plays well in the big games. Number 23, North Carolina State, 9-4 in the season. Here's another team out of the South they have good athletes. They played a strong schedule, but they're not going to win conference championships or even national championships, but they will play good football. They have good athletes, a good recruiting base, and a good following at North Carolina State, number 23 in the country. Number 24, Memphis, at 10-3 in the country, lost their bowl game to Iowa State, a team that Memphis is, they're not really a conference power, they're not a national power, but they are playing good football, and the fact that they finished ranked 24th in the country, a program that's more well known for their basketball prowess. Congratulations to Memphis for playing good football and finishing number 24. And the final program, the top 25, Virginia Tech, 9-4. You think about Virginia Tech. Here's a team that competes with West Virginia for talent, and also Virginia. But they're not the team that they had when Michael Vick was there and they played Florida State for a national championship. But they managed to hang around the top 25. Coach Beamer built a great program at Virginia Tech before stepping down. But always a team that has had a lot of success in big games, and they stay relevant. Even though Virginia is not a big college football hotbed for talent, Virginia Tech has managed to stay in contention. And some of the other teams to be considered, Washington State, when you think about them, they finished 9-4 in the season. And you look at them, they had a great coach in Leach, and they're a team that, not a Pac-12 power, but a team that can upset people, and they did it. They even knocked off USC early in the year. You look at Troy, finished 11-2, Florida Atlantic 11-3, followed by Fresno State. They finished at 10-4, and South Carolina finished 9-4 in the season, followed by Army, finished 10-3. Iowa State finished 8-5. Remember, they knocked off Oklahoma and also knocked off Memphis in a bowl game, but Memphis finished ranked higher than them. You go to Utah out of the Pac-12, 7-6. Iowa, 8-5. They had a big win over Ohio State. Wake Forest, 8-5. Appalachian State finished 9-4. Remember, they beat Michigan several years ago when they were a lower division school. Ohio, 9-4. And San Diego State finishes at 10-3. And that's college football. I know we love it. College football is great. We'll have to see more of it next year, as a lot of people love the pageantry of college football. And when it's done right, it's something that everyone can be proud of. I just hope they find a way to start paying some of the players, because if you don't, it's just more of a money grab for the NCAA and all the coaches who get the multi-million-dollar contracts, and the players get nothing. So I hope we can find a way to address that. and at least give the kids an annuity for helping make the coaches millionaires. I want to finish our program today by talking about the NBA and especially Kevin Durant. Here's a guy 29 years old, has been an MVP of the league, averages 25 points a game for Golden State. He can become the 5th player to reach 20,000 points before he turns 30. Tonight, Golden State is hosting the LA Clippers in a game that they should win, even though Steph Curry's not going to play in the game and Klay Thompson's going to sit down. Steph Curry has a bummed ankle. But Durant, if you think about what he's able to do, he can join Wilt Chamberlain, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, and also when you think about how hard it is to reach that level of success. If you think about this kid was drafted out of Texas, and he went to Seattle. He was drafted by Seattle. And they ended up they sold the franchise down to Oklahoma City. So he can think about what he can do. Wilt Chamberlain, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. And just think about the success that he's had in being able to get to 20,000 points as a player that sometimes gets double teamed. He's a 7-footer, 6'11" guy. He can dribble, he can play the power forward point guard position. He can even play center because of his wingspan. And here's a guy that had everything going for him. He's played with Harden. He's also played with Westbrook. Now he gets the chance to play with Curry and Thompson. And you think about what it means for him. A guy that has chased a championship and finally found the championship. Didn't get it done in college, but I'm proud of the way he plays. He's not the biggest guy, but here's a guy that's willing to challenge DeMarcus Cousins in a fight. They're not going to fight. They're going to sell wolf tickets. We know that. But here's a guy that doesn't back down from a guy that's a lot bigger, maybe even by 50 pounds on him or more. But he has the heart of a lion. And what I love about watching Durant play, he's not shy to take the winning shot when the game's on the line. Whether it's Curry or Durant or Thompson, you can feel good with either one of those guys taking the winning shot. So if he gets a chance to join the likes of Kobe Bryant, Wilt Chamberlain, Michael Jordan, and LeBron James did it first, then to get that 20,000 points, he's earned it because he's done it with different teams. He's done it also not being the go-to guy on the team with the Golden State Warriors because he has 3 guys that are at his peer when you think about shooting the ball. But when it comes to a guy that has been criticized for transferring and changing programs, I think that I wish him nothing but the best. I know he's been someone that came up on the hard side of the tracks, but he's made his money, he's made success, and he's not someone that embarrasses the league or his team. And I really appreciate the way he plays the game. He kind of plays with a chip on his shoulder, but you need that when you're playing against guys that sometimes outweigh you by 50 pounds. Also, as we close, John Gruden, again, sworn in for the Raiders head coach, actually a $100 million contract over 10 years. With bonuses, he can make more than $100 million when you think about that. Wish him all the best, but he doesn't need any wishes. He just needs to cash that $100 million that they're going to give him. I don't know how you give a guy that was 57 and 55 and fired from his last job. He was fired from Tampa. And I don't care how many coaching camps he went to and how much film he watched. He was 57 and 55. For people where the facts matter, look at that. There's a lot of coaches out there that had a lot better record than that, and some offensive assistants and defensive assistants that could have a chance at getting at least half that salary. And they've been playing and coaching over the last decade. But Gruden is a good old boy network. He's part of that good old boy system, so he'll go as well as they'll keep him around there. But I don't see he and Reggie McKenzie lasting out that 10 years. When you have a lot of power, something has to give. Rich Gannon decided not to become the Raiders quarterback coach just yesterday, and he was going to be there trying to give some guidance to Derek Carr, who I think has a bright future as long as he has someone who can groom him in the right direction. So no matter what happens in the world of sports, people will always go where the money is. They're going to do what's best for them and their families. And no matter who you like as a head coach, when you get the opportunity, your one-loss record will determine if you keep your job. And I just think that 57 and 55 record with John Gruden, it might come back to bite the Raiders for putting that much money into one person. That's the kind of money you put into players, because Gruden's not going to run any plays. He's not going to run the ball. He's not going to pass. He's not going to tackle anybody. They could have taken some of that money. I can see if they have Belichick leaving New England. If you're going to give $100 million, why not try to woo Bill Belichick out of New England for $100 million? I mean, wouldn't that make more sense? He has all the Super Bowls to show for it. and his record speaks for itself. Because even when Belichick was winning Super Bowls, John Gruden was out there, coaching quarterbacks in a film room. He wasn't on the sidelines. I remember the tuck rule in New England. It was Belichick on the sidelines, and John Gruden was on the sidelines. And one guy decided to get out of coaching after he went to Tampa and coached there 7 years with a 57-55 record. And Belichick was still coaching and winning championships. So if anyone's going to get $100 million, why not give it to the guy that's won? That makes sense to me, but again, that's from the outside looking, and we'll see what happens, and I wish everyone success. As we always say, that every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and the good up boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever any excuse for domestic violence. If you know any woman going through that garbage, please call 911, because no woman should ever have to go through that garbage all on her own. And as we always tell you, on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.